they are. Like growing up, I was like, we're probably lower middle class, salt of the earth.
This comedian goes on to say that he then realized he wasn't lower middle class when a Facebook memory reminded him about his skiing injuries and how he got a headache at the opera. I wish I could have stitched more so you could have heard his delivery. It was great. This reminded me of when I was recruiting people for my first two studies, where I was looking for people who'd experienced social class mobility, moving from a lower class to at least middle class or higher through employment. How many people approached me to tell me how not rich they were? A real thing someone said to me was, well, I mean, we're middle class. I mean, we have a second home, but it's not large. And in the US, that's not middle class. A second home is at least upper middle class. You could have a second home and not be in the top 10%, of course. And there's a lot of debate over what class here signifies, because it's not just how much money you make, it's also relative to where you live in the country, because some places are far more expensive than others. But this gave me a chuckle. And there is research that has shown that Americans really want to believe they're middle class. Of course, people from lower classes want to say they're middle class to avoid the stigma. And this is because we project a lot of character traits onto people based on their class. We assume people are poor because they deserve it, and we assume people are also rich because they deserve it, ignoring other environmental factors, often including nepotism, inherited generational wealth, or some things that could have happened completely out of your control, such as the mass layoffs we see happening in the past year. And I'm not saying there's no individual factors. I would say the research largely shows it is both individual and environmental that contributes to a class upgrade or downgrade. But it is interesting that people who are usually above what is considered middle class also want to be considered middle class. And I don't fully know why that is. I think part of it is, I don't want to say it's stigma of the rich, but a resistance of becoming the wealthy. There's also the fact that in the US we have such giant economic inequality that even someone with multiple homes and doing very well, owning their own business that's very successful, etc., can still look up and say, well, I'm nowhere near Elon Musk, so if that's upper class, I'm not there. But that's also such an insane level of wealth that is really hard to conceptualize. The difference between millions and billions is really hard for the average person to conceptualize, because we're never going to see those billions with a B.